Welcome to CosmicConjunctions, the intersection of UAPs, UFOs, and early world religions. We're going to have a whole lot of fun diving into this subject. And my guest host is none other than Teresa Tyndall. Teresa, why don't you tell them about your background? You've got a fabulous background, so they're going to be really impressed. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. I was director for Marilyn MUFON,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually resuscitated that chapter that had been a dead chapter, and there was a lot of interest, and so I got it going again, and it was great. It was very successful. I was also one of the first registered congressional lobbyists on the UFO issue.
Wow.
And that was pretty awesome. Yeah. So I was actually in Congress, talking to members of Congress about the UFO UAP issue. And it's been very exciting to really get that moving. Most people didn't even know what we were doing. And we got a lot of laughs until it really
Yeah.
went mainstream.
Until you
And
said Congress, I said, well, wait a minute.
yeah. Congress was taking it seriously. So people started to realize, wow, it's a real serious issue. And I've done TV. I appeared in UFOs, The Last Evidence, season 2. And I've done Coast to Coast. I've done a lot of radio, TV, media. I've been in the UFO field for probably 15 years.
Wow, I'm so jazzed. I'm so lucky to call you my co-host. So this is really going to be a lot of fun. This is
Oh,
really
you're
great.
very Rick. Thank you. I feel
Thank
that
you.
way too.
Thank you so much. Well, let's kind of get into it a little bit. Without further ado, one of the first things I've heard about was the ancient Sumerians, and that's kind of the basic information that I've got. So what more can you fill us in on?
Yeah, the UFO, most people think that the UFO issue is a current issue. People say we need they'll say things like we need to have first contact, and no, we we've been having contact for thousands of years.
Right.
Maybe first documented modern day contact, but I think my grandpa summed it up best to me the last time I saw him, because he was also an experiencer. And he said to me, he said, Teresa, whoever they are, they're here and they've been here for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the time I thought, well, grandpa, yeah, but I time has gone by now and I have a lot more experience, and grandpa was right. They have been here, I think, probably since the beginning of recorded history. I think a lot of what has been recorded as our religious stories, and a lot of our folklore has been inspired by contact with advanced others. And, it's really, they're not of this earth, and an angel or a demon or any of the entities, that have been described in religious text, the definition is the same. They're not of this earth. So ancient Sumeria is a really good place to go to see where they were recording what they saw very specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And these weren't crazy people, and they weren't stupid people. They were very specifically describing what they saw in the skies.
Well,
And
one of the funniest things is that I always laugh about is well, how would they know? How did they stare out into the moonlight? Well, they didn't have TV. They didn't have TV. They didn't have other stuff to look at. So of course, they studied the stars. That's
yeah,
just a side of mine that always used to get me. It's like, well, they didn't have TV.
right. It's what the entertainment.
That's right.
They slept under the stars.
Sure.
That's what they did. They didn't have lights, really.
Yeah.
They had fire.
Yeah.
So when it got dark, it was dark, and they looked at those stars, all night.
Yeah.
That's what they looked at. So they were real masters of their environment, and they knew what was normal
Mm.
and what wasn't. And it's the consistency too throughout cultures and religions around the world of advanced people who come from the sky. That is ubiquitous. No matter where you go, there's some version of that story. And I think we have to really pay attention to what they were telling us. And I think it's an exciting time because this really it brings together, it reconciles science and religion. Religious people have been saying that there is a uh, another higher intelligence, and the scientific people have been saying no, there's not. uh but this could really reconcile those, and I think both have been right to some degree. And so I think it's an exciting time when science and religion can come together like that and say, yeah, well, you were partially right.
Right, exactly, and neither school of thought is necessarily wrong or right, and it could be a combination of all world religions. I mean, the Anunnaki were also weren't they humanoid? Let's see, what did I write down? Humanoid, non-physical spirit beings that were part of the Sumerians' visions and things that they saw. The Anunnaki. Can you tell me a little bit more about them? The Anunnaki.
Yeah, so the Anunnaki were, a lot of people now will say that the Anunnaki is actually the name of the race of extraterrestrial entities who have been and are currently visiting us. I'd imagine there are probably several different types who are visiting us. But the Anunnaki have historically been, the name of the group. And, so I think so if you're going to use biblical terms,
Hmm.
the Bible talks about the Elohim,
Okay.
and the Elohim is actually a plural word, which is referring to the gods, plural.
Okay.
So some people in modern times are using Elohim and Anunnaki interchangeably. And really, what it's referring to is advanced extraterrestrials who have been here and who are here. There is a school of thought that would say Yahweh was an Anunnaki. There are some scholars who would say that there were multiple Anunnaki who were visiting us and were interpreted as gods, and Yahweh was one of them.
It was interesting. Not too long ago, I saw a couple of documentaries, and they showed some paintings from early Christian religions, and I think it was the Miracle of the Snow by a Florentine painter, and it had an alien ship in the viewfinder. The Madonna with Saint Giovanni de Domenico. I think I'm sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing it, but there was also the Association and the Baptism of Christ. So I saw these and I had never seen them before, and I saw them and I saw the depiction of aliens somewhere in there, and I was fascinated. I'm like, where did that come from? And it was really fascinating. And now that I have gotten into the subject more, I'm finding that more world religions all across the world have seen visions and seen things that were unexplainable. Although the Göbekli Tepe, the Olmecs in Mexico, a lot of peoples have seen different characteristics of aliens or UFOs or UAPs, however you want to call them, and have had different visions all over the world. So it's really interesting to me, um, and I don't know what more you've thought about that, but I mean I'm sure you've written some fantastic articles on it.
Yeah, I mean that's really, that's how we know we have a real phenomenon here. We're not just this isn't just, crazy people or people who are hallucinating or on drugs or some sort of substance or seeing things. it is so consistent around the world, that there are intelligent beings who come from the sky. And I love your examples of the medieval Christian religious art. I have some of those prints in my own house because,
Wow.
they say a picture is worth a thousand words. And I think that's really true. I have the baptism of Christ in my living room.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I love that picture. That was painted, I believe it was the 1400s. It was painted by a painter in the Netherlands. And it very specifically, I'll send you, a graphic to insert into this so
Okay.
people at home can see. But it's very clear that there is a disc in the sky that has light beams coming down on Jesus during the baptism. And so when you read that script, when you read that in the Bible, the baptism of Christ, it talks about how the clouds opened up and it says the Holy Spirit came down upon Jesus. And there's a very interesting scholar, and his name is Mauro Biglino.
Mhm.
He's Italian, and he used to actually be a Bible translator for the Vatican. And he is doing Bible translations now. He's doing it, he's doing the translations in an updated way. So he's using modern day terminology in his
Mhm.
translations. And so one of the arguments that Mara Biglino is saying is that the word for spirit that was translated as spirit, which is ruah or ruach,
Mhm.
ruach, that was actually mistranslated, that it should not have been translated as spirit. It should have been translated as hovering craft. But
Whoa.
obviously, yes. And so think about that in the Bible. If we took every time that there's the word spirit and we replace that with hovering craft, it changes the context dramatically. It's incredible. And then for me, anyways, when I have done that, everything kind of falls into place and perspective for me. And then it becomes clear to me what they were talking about and trying to describe. So if we do that in the baptism of Christ, where it says the clouds opened up and the spirit came down upon Jesus during his baptism, if you say, well, the clouds opened up and a hovering craft appeared,
Yeah.
and the light beams came down upon Jesus. That really makes it clear. And so when you look at the baptism of Christ from the 1400s, it does become very clear what they were talking about, I think.
Now, explain to our listeners that Mario is not just some offshoot kind of crazy kind of guy. I mean, he's very very well and a learned scholar. So I mean,
Oh, yeah.
he's not just some guy off the street, So
No, that's right. No, that's right. He's not just some guy who's doing this in his basement. He was he was an official translator for the Vatican for many, many years.
yeah,
And he worked very closely with the popes to in Bible translations. So, and you can find him on YouTube. He sends out emails. It's in Italian, but recently he has started to translate things into English, and you can find English translations. This is very serious scholarship,
yeah.
and when you look at what he's doing, it's incredible. I feel like it's very exciting because I wasn't raised with religion, and so when I would read the Bible or any religious texts, it was clear to me that they were trying to convey something extraordinary, but what? It was confusing.
And I think for a lot of
But when
people,
I
a lot of people, kind of look at it. It was all hocus pocus stories, fantastical stories. But now, when you bring it back and put some practical knowledge to it, it makes a lot more sense. There's a lot of people that have turned away from religion just because they think it's all, made up stories and whatnot. but I think, we might get them thinking a different way, in opening their eyes to this, you know, cosmic conjunction.
It is. It's a cosmic conjunction. I love that. And it's really true. And I think that this this really does make all of the pieces fall into place. When you look at the Bible or any of the major religious texts through this lens, suddenly the pieces fall into place and then a light bulb goes off. Aha, because there's no we have very advanced science, and like you said, a lot of people have fallen away from religion, and there people will use derogatory terms like, there's no sky daddy or fairy or those kinds of things precisely because of the spirit word.
Right.
um but when the word spirit is translated into hovering craft,
Yeah.
that all of the
All the sense
difference.
in the
And it's a
world.
very
Yeah.
specific, yeah, and it's a very specific type of hovering. Mauro Biglino discusses this in his book and some of his videos. The people in the Middle East had birds of prey, and anybody who's seen a large bird of prey kind of hover in the air, before they pounce,
Right.
before they go in. Uh, they do a very specific type of hovering where they're not flapping their wings, they're just gliding.
Mhm.
And that is the type of hovering that the ruach word refers to.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'm so excited to talk with you because I came up with kind of religion. I mean, I was relatively religious when I was a kid. I went to catechism and got confirmed and whatnot. But the stories made sense to me in the realm of faith. I grew up with faith, but I really didn't kind of put a whole lot of credence into the stories per se. I mean, to me, they sounded kind of fantastical and whatnot, but I still ate it up, and I said, well, at least I'm left with faith. So, but now that have taken a second look at everything, this is really starting to make a lot of sense to me. And I think to most people, the more they stick with us and listen to our guests and our call-ins and whatnot, they're gonna find out some more information. So it's fantastic.
It's been very exciting for me too, because I did not grow up in a religious home, but I had had a UFO experience as a kid. And a lot of my family members had also had UFO experience. In fact, every living generation of my family had had pretty dramatic UFO
Wow.
experiences. And, so, I was 10 years old when I had my UFO experience. And so I was looking for answers to my UFO experience through science. And I was very determined to explain what I saw through a scientific lens. And of course, our modern day science really has no space for these kinds of experiences.
Right.
I was very surprised to find myself actually at religious texts, finding answers, to what I had seen and experienced through religious texts. That was the last place I thought I would end up in my research.
It's
So
funny,
it's been a wild journey.
I have not seen a UFO ever in my life. I've never had an encounter, but I have thought about this stuff ever since I can remember. I really, really have gotten into it, and it's funny that you've had all the experience, of your own UFO experience, and have studied it and whatnot. And then here I am, absolutely a layman when it comes to the kind of this information, and now I'm fascinated. So, tell us a little bit more about your experience. What actually did you see?
Yeah. So when I was 10 years old, I was living in Tucson, Arizona, and we lived on the east side of town in a residential area. It wasn't rural at all. And it was about sunset. And I was in I was in my house, and suddenly I felt prompted to go outside. And it was strange. I mean, even as a 10-year-old, I thought, well, that's kind of odd. Like, why, why do I feel like, where is this coming from? Uh, so, anyways, I followed it and I did. I went outside and I laid down in the gravel and, in the desert, all of the yards, you have gravel in the front yard. And some people back east, I'm sure that that's odd for them. But yeah, so
Gravel?
I laid down I I laid down in the gravel and I was making gravel angels. I wasn't really sure why I was out there. I
Yeah.
had just felt prompted to go out there. And so it was just a minute, really a minute or two. And because I was laying down, I was looking up and I saw a gold disc that began to come over the rooftops and it was moving west to east over Tucson. And it wasn't going crazy. It didn't have any fancy lights. It didn't do anything wild. It was just a gold circular disc and it was slowly gliding from west to east. It went right over me, right over my house. And even at 10 years old, I was very excited. I knew what I saw. I mean, I even at 10, I said, "Oh, wow, I know what that is. That's a UFO." And I ran next door to my neighbor's house. She was my best friend at the time. And by the time she got outside, she was able to see it too. By that point, it was off in the distance. It was over towards is it the Rincon Mountains, I think,
Yeah.
that are on
I
the east
think so,
side?
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So it was approaching the Rincon Mountains at that point. So it was starting to slowly go south to go around the mountains. But even she was able to see that, there was something in the distance, but I got the up close, good view of this. And it has been phenomenal for me to find to find other gold discs represented around the world and throughout history. Um, there's a there's a temple in Thailand, and it's called the Temple of 1 Million Golden Buddhas. And
Okay.
they have made an exact replica of what I saw, and it's made out of 1 million golden Buddha statues.
Wow.
And anybody can look this up. It's incredible. It's a giant gold disc. And
Wow.
when I saw that for the first time on TV, I just about fell off the couch. That was the first time I had ever seen a replica of, what I had seen as a kid. And oh my gosh, that's it. How do these monks in Thailand know about this? I still have a lot of questions. I would very much like to travel there and find out why they chose that shape. But I think I know why. I mean, I think that I do think that the gold disc craft it's represented all throughout history around the world. I think that's what, some of them travel in. And it's interesting because in all of my investigations with MUFON, most people report a silver uh, craft or crafts that are going through different colors. The gold ones don't come up as much. So to see that representation in Thailand was shocking.
Wow. That's gotta be mind-boggling, and especially
Yeah.
just watching TV and all of a sudden, "That's what I saw."
Yeah. 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 It was like, 30 years later and I'm watching TV. But, it's yeah, it's really cool. But even in the baptism of Christ painting, the disc that is painted there, it could be argued that that's gold. And I think even throughout I think it goes all the way back to ancient Egypt. I think what they were, what modern day scholars would call the sun discs.
Mhm.
Were not sun discs. They weren't representing the sun. They were representing these gold discs that, the only other word they had, at the time, they didn't have a word for hovering craft.
Right.
So they called it a second sun. And I think that that's what they were seeing. And I actually had the opportunity to run that by an Egyptian scholar from Cambridge. And he agreed. He was interested in UFOs, and he thought that was a good possibility. That yes, they were seeing these crafts, and that's what the second son was referring to.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow. Wow. Well, you know what? I think for our first episode, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. And we want you to join us every week. We want you to join us every episode, and we'll dive more into cosmic conjunctions, the intersection between UFOs, UAPs, and early world religion. Thank you so much, Teresa.
Thank you, Rick, and thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.